My name is Maria Juarez, and you're listening to In This Casa. Bienvenidos. In this podcast, I aim to memorialize and honor my husband David's memory by exploring conversations about life and what it's like in my casa, and hopefully in other casas as well. Welcome back to In This Casa, and thank you for joining me. In this episode, I'd like to go back to the beginning of David and I and talk about how we met. David and I started dating in 2010, but actually we had met on small chance encounters a few times throughout most of our life. If I'm not mistaken, I believe we went to middle school together for 1 year because David was a year older than me. And I believe when he was in the 8th grade, I was in the 7th grade, and I vaguely remember him, or vaguely remember knowing who he was. But I'm not sure if he remembers me from that time in our lives. I'm sure he did because David remembered everything and everybody. Anyway, we didn't really know each other when we were young. And David went to high school the year before I did, since he was older. And by the time I got to our high school, he had already dropped out. So we didn't get to go to high school together. And I don't remember knowing him even, but I did go to high school with David's first wife. And we knew who each other were. We knew of each other. We were acquaintances and always friendly, but never close friends. Cut 2 years later, I think it was already after college. I don't think I was attending SMU anymore. It must have been in maybe like 2006, 2007. It was early when Facebook first became public for everybody, right? It was no longer just available for Harvard students. It was now available for everybody, and everybody was getting on Facebook and friending everyone. And I remember very vividly being out one night at a club with friends. We were sitting on a patio, and David and his first wife were there. They came out onto the patio to say hello to people that I was with. I was with some friends and a couple of girls that I went to high school with that were good friends of mine. And they came outside to say hello. And his ex-wife said hello to the girls that I was with, and she introduced her husband. She also said hello to me. I said hello. I gave her a hug. It was very friendly, as I said, and she introduced her husband. And I don't remember ever knowing or meeting him before that. After that, both of them friend requested me on Facebook, but we never communicated for years. It had to have been 4 years because David and I didn't meet until 2010. And the way that David and I finally officially met was David was separated in early 2010 from his first wife, and they were going through a divorce. And I was not aware of that. But I worked for a large bank at the time in their mortgage department, and it was on my Facebook profile where I worked and what I did. And so he DM'd me and asked me if I could help him refinance his home. And I really had never communicated with him ever before that, but I responded and I said, yeah, absolutely. Of course. I don't do that specifically, but I can put you in touch with somebody who can. And so I did. And I connected him with a friend who helped him refinance his house. And I checked in with him every so often just to make sure my friend wasn't flaking and making me look bad. So I checked in occasionally, said, hey, how's everything going? It was going great. Eventually, he did finalize the refinance of his house and everything worked out. When the refinance of his home was complete, he reached back out to me and he said, hey, I just wanted to let you know everything is done. Appreciate the help. I owe you a drink. Like I said, I didn't know at that time that he was going through a divorce. So I kind of brushed off his invitation because I thought it was a little strange because, again, I didn't know. And so I responded and I said, no worries. I'm glad it worked out. Don't worry about it. Over the next couple of months, I think he sent me messages, a few messages, randomly like, hey, I still owe you that drink. And I just kind of said, oh, yeah, no worries. Don't worry about it. And then one morning, like a Tuesday morning, I posted on Facebook that it was only Tuesday and I had already been having a shitty week and that I already needed a drink. And David immediately did not skip a beat, and he popped into the comments of that post and was like, how about tonight? And so, he'd got me. So I made plans to meet him that evening for a drink. I had no expectations. I wasn't looking to date anyone or looking for a boyfriend. I had spent a lot of my 20s. I mean, I dated and stuff, but I was just the kind of person who was okay with, my solitude. And so, I didn't have any expectations. I made the plans with him to meet him in the evening to be polite because backing out would have been extremely rude at that point. I clearly said I needed a cocktail. And so we made plans to meet. I made plans to meet with him early, I think around 7 at a bar in Addison. And that way, in my head, I could go meet him. We could grab a bite to eat, have a couple of drinks, and I could be home and in bed by 10:30, getting ready to go to work the next morning. So that was my plan, but that is not how the evening went. We met. I arrived first. I got to the bar, went out to the back patio, ordered myself a drink, and then David got there and he sat down, and I can't really tell you what we talked about, but I just remember we hit it off. And I was not expecting that, and we closed the bar down. And not only did we close the bar down, we talked on the phone on the drive home as he drove home and I drove home. And we were basically inseparable ever since. From that moment on, we were always together. And David was the perfect partner for me. We were so alike in so many ways, but we were completely opposites in the most perfect ways. For instance, I am a social person and I'm outgoing, but I won't go out of my way to be constantly doing things or going to events or, being social. It's just not a priority for me. And it was a priority for him. So that really brought that out in me. I tend to be a very serious person, sometimes stoic, and David was just a light in the life of the party. And so he brought out that fun and that silliness in me that I had in there, just in my, deep within my personality and within my soul, but it's just not something that I let out a lot. He was very planned and I could be very spontaneous. We were just complete opposites in the best ways, and it was perfect for us. And we were so in love. We fell in love so quickly and so deeply. And it was amazing. It was the love and the partnership. He was the love and the partnership that I had prayed for years, and that I was not wanting to settle for anything less than. He was all of that and more. He was the love of my life. And I think that was really obvious, the perception of our marriage and our relationship. You could see that in us. I think I kind of knew that, during our marriage and during our relationship, during the 13 years we were together, but because people would say things, because David and I were so outwardly affectionate all the time. I mean, it was definitely for sure instigated by him mostly, but he was so affectionate with me. He was always hugging me and loving on me. Him and I were always kissing, and that was in public every day. Like, it was in front of our kids, in front of our guests in our home, like wherever we were. Like, we were always holding hands. We were always, he always had an arm around me, or we were always giving kisses. We always did like goodbye kisses. We always did good morning kisses. We always did hello kisses. We kissed all the time. And we even one time, because my mom lives with us, or she lives with me now, but she lived with us for years. One time I remember her coming into our bedroom, like, asking like, hey, can I come in? And we were like, yeah, we were just laying there watching TV together. I don't remember what we were watching. And we were laying in our bed, and we have a king size bed. So we were laying separately in our own spaces, but we were holding hands. And she was like, are y'all just laying in bed watching TV holding hands? And it's like, yeah, that's what we do. But we would do that all the time. We held hands in the car. We held hands laying on 2 different couches watching TV. We would stretch our hands and hold hands. And we were just very affectionate all the time. And it was amazing because I didn't grow up affectionately, and I needed it. My soul needed it, and I wanted it. And David's love language was to give affection. And like I said, it perfectly paired for the two of us. And so to kind of back up on my point, people would make comments and say things because we were so affectionate and we would call each other terms of endearment in front of people, and in public. And so, you know, sometimes people would respond and be like, "Oh, you guys are so cute," and sometimes other people would be like, "Wow," like, and so, you know, I don't really know. I guess I don't think I was really aware of, I had an idea of what people's perception of mine and David's relationship was, but losing him was an eye opener because people really began to kind of talk to me about what they perceived our marriage and our relationship to be like. And it was amazing because I felt so blessed and fortunate to have had David in my life and have to have the love that we had. You know, people would make comments about how, you know, they felt like they didn't have the kind of love that we had, or the kind of relationship we had, and they wish they could. There were people that said that they were inspired to look to make sure that that's the kind of love they have in their life going forward, that they hadn't had. You know, there was just a lot of really beautiful comments that were made in regards to what people's perceptions were of our marriage and our relationship. And I am just so deeply touched by that. And like I said, I feel blessed and fortunate that that's the love that David gave me, or that, and that we gave each other, that, you know, we both got to experience that in our lifetimes. But I also wanted to be really quick to tell, you know, to talk to people about the perfection, you know, the perceived perfection of, because people would make comments, you know, David and I never said that we had a perfect marriage or a perfect relationship, but we were perfect for each other. And I think people could see that. And I just kind of got a little concerned, you know, when I lost him, when people would make comments about, you know, oh, how perfect your marriage was and stuff like that. Because, you know, obviously people only, well, David and I were very much an open book. And like I said, we were affectionate with each other in public. And we were so like, we were self-deprecating for each other in public. We loved to bust each other's balls and, you know, laugh together and pick on each other. And like I said, be self-deprecating of ourselves for the benefit of the other one in front of others. And we were just, you know, like we were best friends. And so I think that it was, people felt very much like they knew us because we were open books, and people did. We were exactly who we presented ourselves to be. But like any other couple or any other marriage, there are things that were just for us. And some of the things that were just for us were the effort that we put into our marriage as well too. You know, the perceived perfection. I don't like using that word so much, but that's what the conversation had been. But that perceived state of our marriage, it took a lot of work for us to get there, and we worked for years and years and years on it. And I really want people to know that yes, you know, my husband and I were happy, and we were in love, and we were committed, and we were perfect for each other, but we were not perfect, and it was not always perfect, and we worked at it. You know, we worked at our marriage. That's why I like to stress that we were committed to each other, because we were committed to being together and we worked at it. You know, my sister always says that, one of my sisters always says that one of her clients once told her, a client that was older and been married for decades and decades and decades, told her that she asked the client what was the secret to, you know, a long, happy marriage. And the client told her that the secret was not wanting to get divorced at the same time. And I'm not saying that David and I ever wanted to get divorced, but I am saying that there are struggles, you know, or there were struggles in our marriage where one of us would be having a hard time, and the other one would have to be strong enough for the both of us and pull the other one back in. And that wasn't, you know, sometimes it was David pulling me back in. Sometimes it was me pulling David back in, but we would take turns doing it, and we were committed to doing it and being the strong one and doing it. You know, we worked on our communication when we first started dating and then got engaged and then got married. Our communication then was not the deep communication that it was, you know, in the end. And we had to work to get there. We went to therapy for a decade, and our therapist would see us together as a couple. She would see us as individuals, and she would see us as a family, you know, with our kids. And anyway, I just really want to stress that we worked at it. You know, I worked at being, well, not I. we worked at being considerate to each other and vulnerable with each other and not being prideful and being of service to each other. And we didn't always successfully execute that. Sometimes we failed. But we also learned how to be able to say, I'm sorry. And we're able to apologize to each other. And we just really wanted to be together. You know, we were building a life together. We had goals. We had dreams. We were hitting our goals, realizing our dreams. We were hitting milestones in our life together. And we were just working at it as a team. We were a team. One of the things that we had that was, I think, very significant to the way that our marriage and relationship was perceived was trust. You know, we had a lot of trust. And at one point we even went to a marriage class at our church, which we were always very trustful of each other. But even that, I feel like, helped us to get to a different level of being able to trust each other and just trusting life and the process, and, you know, maybe not hanging our insecurities so harshly on each other, which I think I'm really grateful for, because looking back on it now, I feel like the ability to trust each other gave me the ability to allow David the freedom to be himself. And now, knowing that his life was going to be short, I am very grateful that I gave him that freedom, or was able to trust him to have the freedom to be who he was and do the things that he wanted to do. Obviously, to a point. I'm not saying that I just let David, you know, do whatever he want, nor did he just let me do whatever we want. But in our marriage, you know, we were very much aware that each other are grown-ups, and, you know, I didn't want to ask permission if I wanted to go buy a nice handbag. And so I didn't want my husband to feel like he needed permission for things that he wanted either. And so we operated that way. You know, we tried to operate in, you know, zones in our house. Like, this is, these are the things that are like wifely zones. These are the things that are like husbandly zones. Those things don't mean that we can't go into each other's zone and help each other out. But these are things that not just you're responsible for, but also like you are the dominant decision maker in. And I think that those things kind of helped out, because, like, I didn't tell him what tools to buy, and he didn't tell me what couch to buy. And, you know, that seems really small and trivial, but those things are things that couples fight over. And we're doing our best to keep contentment and harmony in our home. And so, like I've mentioned previously, you know, David had FOMO, and he wanted to do everything all the time, and he traveled for work. And so when he would travel for work, he always wanted to turn his, you know, couple of days in whatever part of the country he was in into, if he would always try to tack his work trips onto a weekend, whether it be at the beginning of the week or the end of the week, so that he could take that weekend and explore the area of the country that he was going to be in. And I, you know, within reason, as long as we could afford it, and he wasn't going to go, I mean, I was going to say he wasn't going to go do something risky or crazy, but that's not true. David jumped out of airplanes, and he rode motorcycles, and, you know, David liked to live a lifestyle of adrenaline inducing activities. But, you know, if it was within reason, it was within, you know, our budget of what we could accomplish at that time or that month or whatever, then I let him do it. There were times where he would be in New York and would rent a car and go to upstate New York and drive around, or he would be working in Northern California and he would get a car and drive down the PCH and then fly out of LAX. So I'm just really grateful that he got those experiences. And actually, when we had his rosary and visitation, in the slideshow of pictures, I included pictures of him that were by himself that he took. They were selfies he took when he was out doing these adventurous little travels that he would tack on to his work trips. He would send me, you know, selfies at the Grand Canyon, or selfies on the PCH, or, you know, just wherever he was. He would send me selfies, and I included them. And some people did ask me, like, what were all those pictures of David by himself, you know, traveling? Like, where were you guys? And I was like, you know, that this is what he would do sometimes. And even that, I felt like people were kind of amazed, I guess, that we were in a marriage and that he did those things, but we just trusted each other, and I trusted him, and I knew that he loved me and I loved him, and we wanted to do this together, and that was paramount to any of my insecurities. So, and I tried to keep it that way, and I'm glad that I was able to, because I'm glad that he got those experiences. It makes my heart happy to know that he was able to experience those things in his lifetime here, because David's the love of my life, and my whole purpose became what our goals were, and what the dream of our life and the dream of our future was going to look like. And my whole purpose was working every day to execute that. And, David dreamed up all the dreams, and I just worked on making them happen. And not to say that, obviously my husband worked and he had a really good job and he did very well. But, David, we had a joint checking account, and our money pulled in together, and I handled our finances, and David didn't bat an eye at it. That's how we did it. And he let me know, I want to do this, I want to do that, and I want to buy this, and I want to buy that. And I just, made sure that our finances were in a way that could happen within reason again. But, those were our two roles, and I was happy making sure that he was happy. It made me happy to make sure that he was happy. And, now that I don't have him, I'm very much lost in my purpose of life at the moment. And I miss my husband. And I imagine that that's going to be what my life is like until I take my last breath on this earth. After I lost him, I don't remember if it was what day. Those first couple of weeks especially are kind of a blur, but there was one day that my uncle on my dad's side, my Uncle Namias, he came to visit me, and it was very sweet that he did. And I didn't even think about it until he sat down and we started talking, that he himself had lost his first wife when they were in their early 40s, just like David and I. She passed of cancer. And I was so young, it just didn't really cross my mind while I was going through it myself. And so he sat down and we were talking, and he reminded me that he had lost his wife, Peggy. And I feel like in that moment, obviously we had an instant connection, and my heart just sunk for him to think that, he went through that years ago. And he's in his 70s now, and he's remarried. He had kids with Peggy, and then he had kids with his second wife as well. So clearly his life has moved forward. But as he and I were talking, he was talking to me about Peggy, and he was telling me that the first few months are going to be the hardest, and that it'll get easier. And I was listening to him and taking it in and trying to be open to what he was saying and his advice, since clearly he had experienced the same thing decades ago. But as he was talking to me, he started to cry. And I've never seen my uncle cry. And he was just very vulnerable and crying with me. And all I could think to myself is that, yes, he's moved forward. Yes, he's remarried. Yes, he has other kids. But clearly that love for his first wife has never diminished for 30 years. And 30 years later, he's still crying at the thought of losing her, and talking about her, and talking about the grief he experienced at the time, and the grief he still experiences today. And I saw my future in that, I imagine myself 30 years from now, when I thought 30 years from now, David and I would be retired and traveling and living out our retirement goals together. Instead, I'll have a different life. I don't know what that life will look like, but I'll have a different life, and I will still desperately love and miss my husband. But I am trying to center myself in being grateful for the 13 years that we did have together. They are the most cherished moments of my life, and I hope and wish and pray that everybody that I know and I love, and even those that I don't know, get to experience the kind of love and relationship that David and I had. I love my husband so much that losing him and knowing that he went into the next life, whatever that looks like, whatever it is, has taken the fear that I had out of leaving this world away from me. I no longer fear it like I used to, because I know that when I get there, I'll get to see him again. We'll be reunited. And it's all my heart wants in the world. Join me here next Saturday, and we can continue to talk about what it's like in my casa. And if you're interested in talking about what it's like in your casa with me, send me an email. I'll talk to you soon.